floor over to you.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. We have a light group. Apparently, there's a city's function somewhere in the country that has drawn people there and not here. So, welcome. And we will turn it over to Jamie here to kick this off. Jamie?
Thank you very much. We have our first panelist in the room, but I'm also going to promote um, Mr. Jeff, who is now no longer in the audience, to talk a little bit about what's coming to JPAC. The work program is in your packets today, but some of the items that you'll see include a kickoff conversation around the RTP. And this item is coming to JPAC and Metro Council for a kickoff conversation. And thereafter, it'll continue to come back and will trickle down to some of the policy support committees like TPAC and MTAC. Additionally, you'll also hear things, I believe, about the MTAC, or excuse me, MTEP update, which is exciting, and the IBR presentation, the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Today, you'll hear a couple presentations that are touching on those items, particularly the IBR presentation. Some new information came out yesterday, and we're excited to be one of the first informational stops since that information has been released. With that, I'll turn it over to Kim and Jai to kick off their presentation.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Good morning, everybody. My name's Kim Ellis. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Regional Transportation Planning Manager at Metro, and I'm really excited to be here today with Jai Daniels on my team, who's been leading development of a draft resolution declaring extreme heat and climate as issues of significant and growing threat to our region. This work has been as an outcome of the Cooling Quarters study that Jai was a part of the project team on that was completed last year, and it identified some initial steps for Metro to take to do more around this topic. This resolution was discussed by the Metro Council earlier this month, and they supported staff moving forward to bring it back to them in April. And so as part of that, we will be going through the MTAC and MPAC review process to seek a recommendation from MPAC at their April meeting. We have been working to develop this resolution in collaboration with the three public health agencies from Washington, Clackamas, and Multnomah counties. We've also consulted with the state resilience officer and the Oregon Health Authority on this. So this really helps raise awareness of the issue and help amplify it to set the stage for further regional coordination and action to address extreme heat. So with that, we are seeking your feedback today in advance of the MPAC meeting in April. And any feedback that you provide will be bringing back to MTAC actually right after this meeting this morning, but also we'll be sharing that with the Metro Council. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jai Daniels, who's Associate Transportation and Climate Planner with Metro, to let us walk us through what the resolution is and why it's important. Go ahead, Jai.
Thank you, Kim. Like Kim mentioned, my name is Jai Daniels, and I'm honored to be here with you today. I'm going to start by talking or giving some background on the work that led to this proposed resolution. But first, I do want to address the urgent threat of climate change on our region's health, infrastructure, natural ecosystems, and quality of life. The 2020 wildfires affecting Clackamas County and forcing evacuations, and the 2021 heat dome affecting the entire region when over 80 people lost their lives have both made it clear that we cannot wait to act. The region faces hazards like extreme heat, wildfires and wildfire smoke, floods, drought, and ice storms that are intensified by climate change. But we are focusing today on extreme heat because it is actually the deadliest weather-related disaster, killing more people on average than hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and lightning. I also want to stress that people across our region are already feeling the impacts of climate change, and those impacts are not felt equally. vulnerable community members, which include low-income households, communities of color, young people and older adults, veterans, people living with chronic health conditions, and those living alone or outside, are disproportionately affected by these climate hazards. I also want to start by recognizing that this proposed resolution is already building on a foundation of ongoing work across our region to address the worsening climate crisis. Metro and our local and regional partners are leading climate actions such as building community resilience, replacing pavement with vegetation, installing cooling units in low-income housing, planting trees, and providing free drinking water. But I also want to quickly call out the picture in the bottom right of the screen. This was taken during a recent tree planting event on Sunrise Corridor that was hosted in partnership between Clackamas County, Friends of Trees, and the Sunrise Community Coalition. However, we have heard from some of our partners, including community-based organizations, that they're struggling to maintain some of these projects and initiatives due to limited funding and capacity, and that there are still critical gaps outside the geographic scope of some of these existing programs. And this proposed resolution recognizes that need and a need for coordinated regional action to strengthen these efforts and build region-wide resilience. Last October, we presented the Cooling Corridor study to regional advisory committees, including the C4 Metro Subcommittee and Metro Council, and we heard that it is important to turn our climate research and recommendations into action. The Cooling Corridor study identified 47 potential supporting actions to build regional resilience to extreme heat, and the very first action in the report is Action 1A to declare extreme heat as an issue of regional concern and designate a region-wide heat season. After Metro Council accepted the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan last November, Council directed Metro's Chief Operating Officer to work with Metro Council to identify priority climate actions for Metro in the next 5 years. The proposed resolution we are introducing today stems directly from the Cooling Corridor study, like Kim mentioned, and is a proposed first step to implement Metro Council's direction. During engagement with heat and climate experts for Metro's Cooling Corridor study last year, we learned from the former chief heat officer for Miami-Dade County in Florida about a heat-related model that is already working in practice. She shared that people living in the county were not as aware of the risk of extreme heat as they were for hurricanes and sea level rise. To address this and raise awareness, the county decided to designate a heat season from May 1st through October 31st and initiate an annual heat season protocol that includes several initiatives, including an outreach campaign that shares heat safety messaging with around 3 million people and a mini grant program for businesses so they can purchase hydration, shade, and other cooling equipment. And since first designating the heat season and activating that protocol, Miami-Dade County has had the lowest rates of heat-related ER visits of any county in Florida. And we think this approach offers a replicable model we can adapt for our region, starting first with designating a region-wide heat season. So now we'll share some more information about why we believe the time is right to bring this proposed resolution forward. The youth protesters in this image understand what is at stake for their futures. They're already calling out that their future is burning, but that future seems to already be here. We are already experiencing more wildfires, worsening air quality, droughts, reduced snowpack, more variable winter weather, and hotter summers. This makes it clear that climate adaptation is not just a future priority, but rather adaptation is critical, urgent, and a key part of our region's climate work. Metro's partners already recognize the need for urgent action. In 2020, the City of Portland declared a climate emergency, acknowledging that our region faces a human-made crisis. That same year, Clackamas County declared a state of emergency and issued evacuation orders in response to the threat of wildfires. In 2025, Washington County completed the development of a climate action plan, which included both climate mitigation and adaptation goals and actions. Multnomah County released a draft climate justice plan developed in collaboration with frontline community members and organizations and identifies mitigation and adaptation strategies. And Clark County also finalized the climate change element in their county's comprehensive plan, including adaptation actions. So Metro recognizes that our partners are leading the way, and this proposed resolution reflects our shared responsibility to act, especially for the generations who will inherit the decisions made today. This proposed resolution is reinforced by a deep body of existing Metro plans and commitments. In 1995, Metro established the 2040 growth concept to guide local and regional land use and transportation planning across the region, including the region's urban growth boundary, to protect farms and forests and help ensure the efficient use of land. And this concept kind of works as the foundation of all of our work at Metro. And across plans like Metro's Regional Framework Plan, Climate Smart Strategy, Regional Transportation Plan, and Metro Council's strategic targets, to name a few, Metro has consistently recognized the importance of taking regional action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase climate resilience. And although climate mitigation is still very important to prevent the worst impacts of climate change, it is clear that climate adaptation is becoming increasingly critical and urgent, making greater support for local and regional adaptation projects and initiatives imperative. We're seeing strong precedents and support for designating a region-wide heat season. The CDC already recognizes May through September as the primary warm season months in the United States. And importantly, to be consistent with the CDC and other guidance, Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington counties already observe May 1st through September 30th for heat monitoring, reporting, and standard operating procedures, which means a region-wide designation would just formally recognize and align with what our partners are already doing. I also want to recognize that the State of Oregon's Resilience Officer and Oregon Health Authority are supportive of Metro designating a region-wide heat season, recognizing it as an opportunity for local and regional agencies to lead the way for the rest of the state. Now I will introduce the purpose and details of the proposed resolution. I want to recognize 5 main objectives for this resolution. The first is to raise awareness of extreme heat as a critical issue in the region. The second is to emphasize the urgent need for more climate adaptation efforts and build on existing work across the region. The third is to strengthen coordination within Metro's internal operations and treat climate change as a cross-jurisdictional and region-wide issue. The fourth is to recognize that this is Metro's first step to begin to help build region-wide resilience to extreme heat and climate change. And lastly, this resolution can help set the stage for future collaboration and partnerships among Metro and local, regional, and state partners, especially around extreme heat and resilience. So this proposed resolution has 3 main parts. The first is to declare extreme heat and climate change as critical and growing threats to the greater Portland region, recognizing that our region is already experiencing the consequences of climate change and that those impacts are expected to intensify. The second is to designate May 1st through September 30th as the official heat season for the greater Portland region to raise public awareness of extreme heat, with the understanding that this period may be amended in the future as climate conditions change. And then lastly, the third is to support coordinated efforts to address extreme heat and other climate hazards within Metro's internal functions, but also among local, regional, and state partners. And I want to be sure to note that if adopted, this action would not replace or interfere with existing notifications or protocols at Metro or at other agencies in the region. So before we open the floor for discussion, I would like to share some of our next steps that Kim kind of mentioned at the beginning, but the MPAC meeting was canceled for March, so our staff will bring MTAC's recommendation to MPAC at their April meeting. And we're meeting with MTAC later today, and we'll be integrating the feedback we hear in March into the draft resolution before returning back to MTAC, MPAC, and Council in April to ask for adoption. And so we're here today to just hear some feedback about the proposed resolution from all of you. And we also ask for some advice on additional actions that Metro can take to support the climate work that you're already doing in our region. But now I'll turn it back to Jamie to lead the discussion. But before I do, I want to make sure I leave some space for questions.
Great. I see Councilor Pratt has her hand up.
I guess I don't really have a question. I just want to commend Metro. We have so many pressing issues going on, but we've got data to show that climate change is, going to affect our region. That I know, like our climate action plan says, we're going to have a um, much drier summer and 14% increase in temperatures, and then these rainstorms will be more intense. So this is something we know that's coming, and I commend Metro for, taking action now rather than waiting till it's too late.
Thank you for sharing.
Go ahead, Mayor O'Neill.
Yeah, I really appreciate this work. Everything, I totally agree with everything proposed. And this sounds like a ditch to Portland, but if there was a way to refine it a bit, it almost seems Portland focused in the names. And it would be nice. I'm assuming we're applying to everybody in the region. And somehow I wish, and I know we're trying to streamline the resolution and wording, but maybe a name that is so not for Portland focused. So Wilsonville feels a part of that conversation, Oregon City and the other cities. So some wider language that includes those. That's just a friendly suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Pamela.
So I've watched all this and looked at all this and followed this quite a bit. But one thing I think that is majorly being left out of the thought of more trees and we need to make things greener. I don't know if you're aware, you must be, that ivy that grows on trees along most of the corridors. I was in Forest Park. Oh my gosh. Do you know what ivy does to trees? Ivy strangles trees and they fall down. I have many, many, many. I can show you out my door where the neighbors didn't take care of their ivy and the ivy has taken over those trees. You drive up Burnside all the way out. You think you have problems now? If that is not addressed, the whole deal is the green canopy. If that is not addressed, the green canopy going up Burnside to Washington Park, all you have to do is look both ways and go, oh, I get it. Those trees are being strangled. The greenery along Burnside is ivy. It is not trees. So, yeah, this is all great and fine, but unless you get to the root of the problem, literally the root, what doesn't matter what you do. I can't for the life of me understand why I'm just this little person out here in the country who lives amongst trees and sees this when I drive into Portland and McLaughlin. I drive along and I think, why do I see it and no one else sees it? The trees along McLaughlin they've now taken them, de-ivied them, but it was a disaster. And those trees are huge old trees that were starting to die. So I get the climate thing, but I think that there's also a root issue. We need to have something addressed with that. And I think it's very much part of the climate project, the climate problem. So that's my 2 cents. I don't hear anyone else ever talk about it.
Thank you for your input, Pamela.
Thanks.
Much appreciated. Mayor
Yes,
Milt.
thank you.
Pamela, my wife is a gardener. She cares about that issue a lot too. So thanks for bringing it up. The thing about the Portland region, or the Tri-County region, let's call it that for Mayor O'Neill, those of us that have lived in Sunbelt areas before know that in a in a region that has 4 seasons, your heat season is also tends to be the season for local festivals, outdoor events, music gatherings, all those things that contribute to our well-being as a community by gathering people together and having great events that that supports our tourism and all the rest. And we get to that time of the year, and people have to choose where do they go this weekend because there's so many great things going on. And so I think it's good that we are talking about a coordinated strategy to address some of the things that can spoil those events, which is the high heat. We have a local festival that we do every August, and we've got a local business that's going to partner with providing some mist sprayers for an area where we're going to have children's games to make sure that that people aren't out there suffering for it. So I think it's good to really have that intentional focus on any issue. Sometimes when Metro gets into something, people use the term mission creep. I don't like to use that term, but I'm glad you're clarifying that you're going to be supportive of local county initiatives and what they do already, and just kind of help in a coordinating role to make sure that that we're all on the same page and that we're following similar procedures and similar efforts to mitigate this issue. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say it is important for us to, or emphasize that it is important for us to work closely with the counties, and we've been working pretty closely with the public health staff at the 3 counties to help develop this draft resolution. And I loved that example you gave with the splash pad at the one event. That's the type of thing that I see kind of moving forward. Still supporting those awesome events that I enjoy going to while keeping people safe.
Yeah, Paul Savas here. I just want to throw something out, and that is, being involved here at the regional level for, gosh, I'm old, 30 something years now, or 20, 25 years plus. I know there's a lot of programs and there's a lot of initiatives, and I learned this weekend from a family event from a lot of 20 somethings and 30 somethings that this climate issue is not really top of mind to a population or an age group that I thought would be top of mind. So with that said, I wonder how our resources are best targeted, knowing that we have limited resources, knowing we have so many initiatives. How do we better educate people, for example, and how or why are the boundaries maybe limited? I'm looking at scale, for example. If each city had its own initiative, I think there would be some waste of time and effort. And I can see that the larger the effort is, maybe the more organized it can be. I mean, is this more of a should it be more of a statewide effort to pool resources? Should it be literally a metro region issue? And then what resources do we have? But I'm wondering, how much of this do we tackle and take the limited resources and divide that up into action? Um, and I know that education is also includes action, but how much of this is education and versus what resources do we have? Not versus, but what other resources do we have to apply to this effort? A lot there, sorry.
Cameron, do you?
Yeah, Commissioner Savas, that's a great question. I think there's multiple answers to that. There already is existing messaging around heat that the public health departments do and coordinate on. Some of that's also reflected in work that the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization does, which is for the broader 5-county region. That also includes Clark County, Washington, and Columbia County. And so this really provides a way to be even more coordinated to make the best use of the resources that are being deployed. So the public health staff are currently starting to work on heat messaging for this summer. We do expect this summer to be hotter. We know it's already warmer. We have less snowpack. And it's drier. So yeah, they're planning in advance. And so, Metro can do what it can do to help amplify that existing work. And then I think the other thing to go back to is in our conversations with the state resilience officer, they're in the process of working to develop a statewide plan around resilience. They aren't doing active work in extreme heat at this time, and they are working to integrate that into the resilience plan that is being developed. And so this, from her standpoint, was a really excellent example of what could be done and tailored in other parts of the state. So they're looking at this as an example. So, when it's allowing our region to be working together collaboratively, leveraging the resources that are there and making the most efficient use of them, but also starting to inform broader statewide work that is expected to further amplify this. And then the other thing that I would like to add is that I think by us working together as a region on this issue, when grant opportunities come up, we can point to this work together to apply for. There are grants at the state level, but there have been also grants at the federal level and through nonprofit organizations to really help advance this. And so those are the kinds of conversations that we've been having with the different staff from the public health departments and others that have been involved in this to really identify what those opportunities are, to bring some more resources, to be able to deploy the kinds of strategies that Gladstone is thinking about this summer and other things that were identified in that cooling corridors study last year.
Well, thank you, Kim, and Jai, thank you. Is there any other questions for our presenters? Thank you so much, both of you. Great presentation. We'll see you next time. Jamie.
Thank you for having us.
Back to you, Jamie. What's next?
Thank you, Metro. We are very excited to welcome some friends from the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project, and they are being promoted over now. Hi, Erin. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to Director Francis also for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much. I think Erin's going to pull up slides. And thanks for having me here. It's nice to meet you all. I know many of you I have not met before. Commissioner Savas, I've sat around the table with you before, but nice to see all the faces this morning.
Good to see you, Carly. Congratulations on your new assignment.
Interim, so we'll see how it goes, right? So I am the interim program administrator for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Glad to be here. We're going to talk you through some news we shared yesterday and also preview content that we're taking to both JPACT and Metro Council tomorrow. So we'll go to the next slide. If folks missed the news cycle yesterday, we did announce new cost information associated with the project. And the first and most important thing to recognize is that the states are remaining committed to the 5-mile program set of improvements over time. That includes both bridge, highway, and transit improvements, as well as improvements to bicycle and pedestrian access. Next slide. What we've learned through this last cost estimate process is something that we see across the country, which is that costs are rising in a very significant way. For this program, that 5-mile cost estimate is now estimated to be between $13.5 and $15.2 billion, with a likely cost of $14.4 billion. This reference to probability here is speaking to what's the likelihood that the cost will be at or below that number. So that 14.4 figure is basically a plan to figure. So when we talk about single numbers to plan to and matching up dollars to costs, that 70th percentile probability is what we'll be planning to. That 14.4 is comprised of a base cost estimate. So that is in today's costs, what all the bits and pieces cost. So the price of steel, the cost of labor, all of those things in today's dollars, and trying to remove all of that, the risk potential. This process then has a significant workshop with many experts and a lot of work with other expertise beyond that workshop, where we review and identify risks and label them with possibilities to occur, what that cost might be if they occur, and if there's a time factor there, whether or not they'll vary in time in how delivery would occur. And then finally, we have the escalation factor here. So that is moving costs out into the future. So we have that 7.8 base cost, 4.2 billion in risk, and 2.4 billion in escalation. The 2022 cost estimate was 5 billion to 7.5 billion, with a likely cost of 6 billion. That was at a slightly different probability figure of 60th percentile. The 70th percentile conforms with Federal Highway Administration expectations. 60th percentile was the best practice within Washington State DOT, whose CVIP process we followed for the last process in a risk assessment fashion. Next slide. So something that's really notable, one, is just simply the fact that construction costs have increased by 58% since that initial cost estimate was developed. It's also interesting to note when you look backwards to do looking into the future, right? You have to look backwards and look at those trend lines. If you look at the trend line coming up to the 22 estimate, certainly it was more measured. And between 2022 and 2026, that trend line has grown significantly. So in 2022, although things were starting on that path, if you looked back at history, it didn't quite forecast a future that we've seen over the last handful of years. Next slide. So specific about why the costs have increased from 2022. One, as I've noted, that 58% increase, that's a generic nationwide figure, has certainly increased. We also do have a interstate bridge replacement specific forecast on inflation. We review different points of cost and compare them to other inflationary factors and determined that the sort of washed out general inflation forecast was not quite sufficient to account for local, sort of the regional variation that we saw here in costs comparatively. So we do have a specific inflation forecast, which does result in higher year of expenditure estimates. Second big factor here are schedule extension impacts. We have realized a 2-year delay based on the federal environmental process. So we have already included that risk and those realized issues within the program by way of that 2-year time delay. We are very close to getting final copy on the final supplemental environmental impact statement and then moving towards the record of decision. The other piece that's here is an extension in what we anticipate to be the construction horizon for the program. In 2022, we had fewer packages, fewer contracts that were expected, and we had anticipated maybe a 10-year construction horizon. We are now expecting that to be 8 to 10 years longer. So it was basically roughly a 20-year construction horizon. We have more packages now, but also in looking at how to sequence them, how to coordinate them, capacity of industry, because these investments will be very large, and sort of workforce capacity, that extension in time was necessary and prudent. The last 3 items here speak about sort of level of detail and understanding that we have. So we do have updated scope and quantity estimates. So we had some things that were just escalated in the last estimate from the CRC program. There's been extensive engineering conducted, and so there are significant places where we have more specific quantities and information. So there's greater detail, and that did also increase costs by way of understanding the project better. There's also risk impact. So as we've mentioned, there is that 4.2 billion associated with risks. And the top risks include schedule delay and uncertain market conditions. Finally, we do have that increased probability cost. So I was already speaking about that plan to figure. So we were using a 60th percentile. We're now using a 70th percentile. So it's a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison between those two numbers. Next slide. As I mentioned, the cost estimate validation process, one looks at variation in cost over time. It uses a schedule to build that information and also considers what variation in schedule we may see. So we are updating some program schedule milestones with the release of the cost estimate at this time. In the near term, we are expecting the record of decision for the program to come out middle of this year. We are also working to get construction underway as soon as possible on the bridges themselves, with issuing a request for qualifications by mid this year and a request for proposals by the end of the year. That is through a progressive design build contracting process. That would lead into in 2027 being able to do contract award and negotiations, so selecting the person that we'd be working with, the company that we'd be working with, and then the start of bridge construction in 2028, and also a shift in timing for toll commencement to 2028, because those you want to see those aligned, that you have toll commencement occurring as you are starting the major construction on the program. The new bridge would be open to traffic 6 to 7 years after construction starts. That contracting timeframe is set with the contractor once we have them on board. And then also anticipating continuing to work on the capital investment grant program for transit service, with construction on transit beginning in 2030 when we have the completed full funding grant agreement, and concluding in 2036. There's additional funds needed to complete that body of work. Next slide. What's critical here, and what you'll hear me talk about if you're at JPAC tomorrow or tune into the Metro Council meeting, is the timeframe between now and the end of September, which is critical, and JPAC and Metro have a key role to play in that body of work. We do need to get our environmental body of work completed, so that's the supplemental EIS and the record of decision. The federal government expects to see fiscal constraint as they are issuing the record of decision. What that looks like to them are updates to the STIP and the MTIP that reflect current costs. So we do need to move through a STIP and MTIP process. There are things that cannot start in the federal review time cycle until we get that completed, the record of decision, which is connected to STIP and MTIP. And those reviews go through several layers with the federal government, and so we do need to retain time. What that all factors into is an obligation deadline for the Bridge Investment Program grant and funds that are available there. There's $500 million that will expire at the end of September if we are not able to meet that deadline. So all of these timelines are really critical and important, and we're looking forward to working with JPAC and Metro Council to help make that a reality and not lose that $500 million. Also reflected here is the intention to start and begin the procurement process and get that underway so that we can get the bridges started. Next slide. So when we talk about moving this program forward, certainly $14.4 billion does not match with the funds that we have. And so we do need to focus on starting the program and building it out over time. Phasing is a core component of delivering mega programs. This focus on a first phase of projects is focused on the Columbia River Bridge, replacement of those, connecting those bridges to I-5, extending light rail to the waterfront station in Vancouver, and removing the existing bridges. We also need to, among these core projects, identify a funded phase to submit and share with the federal government in a funded phase for the initial finance plan and to secure the Bridge Investment Program funding. As noted here, we will also, and as I've mentioned, we will be working to continue to pursue funding to complete this core set of projects and then continue on to work on the 5 miles. Next slide. When I speak about that core first phase set of projects, this is what we're talking about specifically. So this is bridges over the river, connections to Hayden Island and SR-14 and I-5 on both sides of the river. And then the orange here, you see there is work to grade separate light rail from Marine Drive, because we really don't want a conflict there, to have it extend over the North Portland Harbor on its own bridge. Would be a station on Hayden Island, would connect into the bridges over the river. That's a common bridge for light rail transit and a shared use path. And then you see on the right side of the river, sort of a slightly larger orange blob, and that's the waterfront station. The other piece that's shown here is bridge removal, and as noted, there is shared use path connection on the northbound bridges that are shown here. The cost for this package is $7.65 billion, which leaves a $2.2 billion gap that we are also working to secure additional funds for through the Federal Transit Administration. Next slide. Getting started with this would be the focus for a funded phase body of work. Initially, core here is the Columbia River bridges and the connections to I-5 on both ends and connections into Hayden Island and SR-14. Pre-completion tolling is included in the core set of projects, also in these set of projects. There is width for light rail built into this bridge, so 34 feet, so that there can be the dual track, two-direction light rail on the bridge. And again, as noted, the shared use path. The total cost for this right now is estimated at $5.9 billion. Next slide. Next steps for light rail include the necessity of building the replacement bridge. Again, if you don't build that bridge with the width for light rail, we're not planning for a program that has transit as a core component, which this program has transit as a core component. Continuing to pursue the $1 billion in funding that we've been targeting through the Federal Transit Administration's Capital Investment Grant Program. And then full funding a grant agreement in 2030, and that construction phase from then until 2036. Next slide. The available funds that we have a $2.1 billion in federal funds. That is the top two lines here. That has been awarded, but has not been all obligated. That's a key body of work now. The next three lines show the $1 billion from both Washington and Oregon. There's some previous state funding and also a placeholder for toll funding contributions to the program. So that comprises $5.45 billion. You'll also see reflected here the intention to keep pursuing the Capital Investment Grant Program for $1 billion and some other funds that have come along the way through a package in Washington and a grant application between the city and the program for through the Reconnecting Communities pilot program. Next slide. So what this means is we have a $450 million or $0.45 billion gap with respect to replacing the bridges with space for light rail and connecting them to I-5. That funding gap is anticipated to begin in 2032. Adding operational light rail to the waterfront station in Vancouver and removing of the existing bridges has a funding gap of $2.2 billion. Which gets reduced to 1.2 upon securing the anticipated FTA Capital Investment Grant Program grant. Additionally, we are working right now with the Treasury offices to explore additional possible funding through tolling. That is all within the context of rates that have been discussed between the Washington and Oregon Transportation Commissions, who are responsible for setting toll rates. So it's exploring whether or not there's additional toll funding that can come out of rates that have been discussed in a public forum to date. We are also exploring whether or not there are cost-saving opportunities available within the program that we can help to close that initial gap. Next slide. And in the long run, we will continue to work on identifying cost-saving opportunities. I've mentioned the toll funding exploration, the Capital Investment Grant Program, and then also as we look to complete that core set, that first phase set of projects, looking for additional federal grant opportunities and also working with each state to consider other cost savings, funding, or financing opportunities. Next slide. So what we continue to do is work with our partners. We had an executive steering group meeting yesterday. As noted, we are working to complete the NEPA process, getting that final supplemental EIS published and receiving an amended record of decision, and then working on that financial plan. And that's that space of both completing the NEPA process is a critical partnership activity for the program with Oregon Metro, as well as Southwest Washington RTC with respect to the STIP and MTIP amendments. And then also building into the financial plan, which is also required for obligating the federal grant funding. We are also working to transition to construction delivery, so working a transition process within the team here to get ready for construction specifically and working to issue those procurement documents. Next slide. Critical is, again, advancing those contracts. The progressive design build model allows for an earlier discussion between those who have the means and methods to deliver this large marine construction body of work and the designers. There are opportunities to explore and identify efficiencies and other sort of unique approaches based on their expertise in this body of work. We are also hoping that that will reduce the potential and the scale of change orders and claims because of the risk sharing that's built into that model. Again, we are looking to publish a request for qualifications mid-year this year and a request for proposals by the end of the year and selecting a contractor in 2027. Next slide. So I will pause here, and I think we have time for questions. Happy to answer what I can. I know we'll have some additional experts with us tomorrow at JPACT and Metro Council, who are the smart folks on some of the financial details. If you have significant financial modeling questions, I may have to take those down and get back to you, but we'll also have some additional folks tomorrow.
Well, Carly, thank you for the presentation. I know this is a huge project. I just want to just make a statement and a concern. You don't need to respond right away. I see some some of my members here have questions as well, but I just want to put this on the table so people understand where at least I believe myself and the commission, Clackamas County Commission, are coming from. First of all, we are supportive and understand that this is a critical piece of infrastructure for years to come. Freight mobility is a key concern. The risk of the bridge, whether it's a seismic event, but just the risk of this piece of infrastructure collapsing is a concern. And I also see the linkage between this and the Rose Corridor from an interstate travel standpoint. For those commuters that are moving between Seattle and California, a good chunk of that is something that happens and occurs every day that we need to be mindful of. And it affects our pricing at our grocery stores, our employment opportunities, whether businesses stay here or move away. There's a lot of economic impacts to just ignoring this piece of infrastructure. That said, the Clackamas County Commission's been on record for over 20 years now with concerns about diversion from the I-5 bridge, and especially during construction, to the 205 over the Glenn Jackson Bridge and down the corridor. And what we learned from this tolling exercise we went through, not specific IBR tolling, but the tolling exercise, is that the higher the toll rate, the more people are inclined to avoid the tolls, which means that we are now more heightened, higher cost. Obviously, your messaging there is clear. It makes perfect sense that the way to recover some of this increase in cost is going to be tolls. But I still have not heard, unfortunately, nor has the commission heard, a solution to this, and whether or not we're going to make accommodations along the 205 corridor for this long construction period, and perhaps now with the cost, again, more avoidance, more people going down I-205 than perhaps ever anticipated. This is a concern. You don't need to respond, but if there's any inkling of hope of that, this is going to be looked at, whether it's on the Oregon side, or I don't know what the challenges are on the Washington side with that. But I just want to put that on the record that while we are not necessarily opposed to it, we're seeing the cost now being so high that it seems insurmountable. But anyhow, you don't need to respond unless you're inclined to respond.
Thank you. We'll take some questions and we'll see if we come back to it.
Okay, great. Mayor Milch.
Thank you. Carly, a lot of people, when they think about this bridge project, they think about the portion of the structure that goes over the river, and that's a bridge to them. But you started out by talking about a 5-mile corridor with a lot of on-ramps and off-ramps and other things that are connected to it. I appreciated you describing it in terms of the phase, the first phase that really is the part that makes it functional, the bridge itself and the essential on-ramps to get to and from the 5. And then I assume those other projects, you will make it more efficient down the line if the funding is there, and it will take a lot longer to get that. But my question regarding the tolling, is this one of the situations where the tolling will be temporary and end at some point in reaching a certain milestone in the project itself? And it's so, if so, what is that milestone? Is it the whole 5 mile corridor, or is it some of the essential things in the middle?
So I think that the answer to that to me has always been so I worked on that old program and I worked a little bit on tolling then. What I anticipate is the strongest commitment I can make to you at this point is recognizing that policymakers in the future will make those determinations. So I think there's really you're talking about a long borrowing period to repay the costs of bridge construction itself, which significant amount of tolls really need to go to at this point. And so at that point of like a 30 or a 40-year borrowing horizon, folks will need to determine in the future what that looks like and whether or not it goes away. I know that other tolls across the river, historically have gone away once debt repayment is complete. The other thing that this does cover are operations and maintenance costs, and there is, frankly, for both states, ongoing challenges with operations and maintenance costs and whether or not folks, those policymakers in the future, choose to keep something around to help support those operation and maintenance costs is something that they will decide.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Councilor Pratt.
Hi, Carly. Thank you for your presentation, for giving us a little hope that this project might actually come to fruition. I'm wondering, well, I have a concern about the diversion, but I'm going to focus. There's the light rail part of the project. How much longer will the diversion be because of that? And that was also not included in the cost estimates. And I'm wondering if there is a general cost estimate for that light rail construction.
So the first component of light rail construction and getting it operational to Vancouver is included in that $7.65 billion figure. So that is a composite figure of both bridge, highway, removal of the existing bridges, and that light rail extension. Recognizing diversion is a concern to many folks, I don't believe that there will be significant diversion of any kind driven by light rail construction, because mostly what you're talking about is that grade separation at Marine Drive. So folks might choose to avoid that, but that's very localized avoidance at that location. And beyond that, you're talking about a guideway that is actually new and that you're building across and related to some very local city streets. So that's the primary relationship, I would say, of light rail to diversion. And also, I think, so my hat before I have been sitting in this role has been working as the Southwest Region Administrator for Washington State Department of Transportation. My observations around diversion are largely formed by that and recognizing that right now folks are making maybe not distance-based decisions about which bridge they take already. The backup on I-5 has been so significant that folks have oftentimes are choosing to go to 205, even though the connections between I-5 and 205, especially close to the bridge, are not great. So they're choosing sometimes already right now to avoid it. So there is this balancing effect that we are anticipating from tolling, that folks are making they're making sort of weird choices right now because of the congestion. There's also an increasing amount of congestion on 205. It's gotten significantly worse even from the time when the program was working on replacement of this bridge initially. So we actually anticipate that some folks, because the function on I-5 will be better, will come back to the I-5 corridor. Some folks may choose to go to 205, and it's going to be a balancing effect. And the early days of that will be probably more extreme, and it will, measure out over time. So I think that folks, I know we've heard long from folks in Clackamas County about these concerns, recognize that they feel very concerning, especially from the tolling conversation that you've had down there around the 205 Abernathy Bridge project. That's our best sort of understanding from a technical space of just what we would anticipate traffic to do.
Great. Thank you. Mayor O'Neill.
Thank you. Carly, thank you very much for the presentation. I agree, we need the bridge replaced. Will Snow's all about replacing bridges that need to be replaced. But I have a question for you, and maybe I misunderstood. we have 11-year delay on the completion date because of a 2-year delay on the environmental.
They
Is
are
that
different.
they're different?
Yeah, so
So could
they're
you help
different.
me with that? Because I was
Absolutely.
gonna, okay,
Yeah.
thank you for explanation.
Sure. So the 2-year delay on the environmental process is the one that we have already realized. So that's embedded in the estimate right now, those additional 2 years of cost issues. That does also push out your final horizon by a couple of years because we haven't started construction yet. So there's been sort of that additional at this point year that we're seeing in the beginning of construction. So then you're looking at that sort of 20-year horizon. The extension of the construction horizon is specific to constructability reviews that have been conducted. So looking at what does it mean to deliver this work? What is the industry capacity to deliver this work? What does it mean to sequence it? And so we've had much richer conversations between the 22 estimate and now to explore what that looks like and understand it better. So that delay is specifically about what is it like to construct? What is the capacity for folks to, I mean, basically tolerate the kinds of disruptions that are in construction anyway? So needing to extend that out because of just coordination of construction contracts and what looks like it's feasible to do at a given time. So that's a sort of engineering and delivery informed set of schedule adjustments.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Commissioner Helm.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Carly, for the presentation. Like Valerie, this is kind of the most hopeful presentation I've seen to date on anything having to do with the Interstate Bridge. Regarding the diversion, and I don't know you, and you said you were with Washington State before. Do you have any data based on what happened in the Seattle area with the I-90 bridge when they started tolling? And I know that there was a huge stink about, people were like, I'm not going to cross that bridge for $5 a day or something. And there was diversion for a while. And then I think those people came back, if that's correct. Can you give me a little history on that?
So I think that's generally, so not specific to I-90, but I think, specific to tolling generally. One, you do see this leveling out. So as we look at, you look at what happens initially, people are making that sort of very specific price-based sort of decision for a while. But the reality is, and again, this is why the 205 congestion that exists already today is so material to our understanding of the issue. Because certainly folks may want to avoid that cost on I-5. They're going to get out to 205. It's already very congested, and they're going to have the cost to them in time delay, which is this other competing factor. And so what we're anticipating is that those things will level out. So certainly there is that moment where people have that, I feel it coming out of my pocketbook and I don't want to do it. But we do see that stuff level out over time. And I would say, especially in this area, even like the I-90 520 example in Seattle is not particularly, it's okay as an example. But here we have 2 river crossings exclusively. There's no moving around the ends of the river like there is up there around the lake. Yeah. And we have more traffic on 5 and 205 than they do on 90 and 520 every day. We have like 80,000 more vehicles crossing the river on those bridges beyond Seattle. So it's I think that's the key factor. So you've hit the nail on the head.
Thank you.
Pamela.
Sorry, I'm coming really from the layman's people. I'm coming from the people that I go to the meetings with and what they say about it. So maybe a little different angle than your process. But one of the things is, ever thought of a tunnel? I know, a little late for it, but this is what comes up. So I think that, I don't know how many commoners you talk to, but this is what comes up when it's discussed. And then a question is, are you saying that you're building the bridge for just traffic and then an additional bridge for light rail?
Right. So I'll answer the last one first. So we are talking about building a bridge over the Columbia River that includes accommodation for 2 dual tracks of light rail. So wide enough that light rail is sitting right next to highway traffic. That will ultimately be southbound highway traffic on one bridge. So southbound highway traffic and the light rail will be on one bridge. Northbound traffic will be on another bridge, and then on the outside of that, on the east side, so looking towards Mount Hood, will be the shared use path. So basically, one bridge, they're both multimodal bridges, but one has the light rail component, and the other has bike ped and other mobility access on it. With respect to the question about tunnel, we hear that comment that comment regularly. We have analyzed it. The issues with the tunnel are the amount of digging that you have to do at and around those entrance points and the degree to which you have these connections that are right on each side of the river and the disruption and the amount of diversion and additional infrastructure that would be needed to connect SR14, which is another highway. So connecting SR14 into I-5, that's right at the river right now. It may not be ultimately the best place to have built it, but it's there. And so having to divert that kind of traffic and volume and reroute it would be massively costly and significantly impactful to the city of Vancouver. Similarly, on Hayden Island, you have a lot of impacts there, and you can't even get the tunnel back to resurface until you're up around the sort of Mill Plain area in Vancouver. So there's some very real. The tunnel advocates don't like to accept those explanations, but that's what we've seen when we've looked at it.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. And then the other thing is, the question was, so if you taking down the two old bridges, what would be the possibility of just using one of the bridges for light rail as opposed to building a new one?
So there would be significant challenges with that. One, most critically, is the fact that our Coast Guard permit for building a fixed bridge means that we have to take the existing bridges out for river traffic. There's also just we maintain these bridges to keep them in service to the public, but there is always a time frame when you lose the capacity to sufficiently maintain bridges, especially when they've been out in the elements for a very long time. So it really is not a in perpetuity system that's out there.
Okay, thank you. And then one other, what is your pivot? So if you've got, because we've got 10 years and people change, the population changes, and who knows, we may be flying over the river by then. But what is your pivot? Can you pivot? How much flexibility where you go, oh, well, we don't really even need that light rail bridge at this point because we have some other, what happens? Do you still go through and build it because it's on the docket, or do you take some time to consider, oh, wait, maybe in 7 years from now, we don't need that. We don't need that light rail. I'm just throwing it out there.
Sure. I think the critical thing is to recognize that there's such a significant investment in light rail in the region already. This is really providing that critical connection across the river. And so it is an extension of that light rail system, but it's also a connection into it. And so I think that that's not going to be replaceable, even if you're talking about sort of different modes or flying cars or whatever. Like that connection into a one-seat ride between downtown Vancouver and downtown Portland and beyond is really, it's unique because you're connecting into this, 60 plus mile system that already exists. The bridges themselves also will have bus on shoulder as a component, and so that's something we're seeing already coming into the bridge on I-5 southbound that we've implemented several years ago. So that bus on shoulder program will still be there and provide sort of out of congestion opportunity for buses as well.
And then as far as that goes, and are the bridges built, like what we're limited on I-5 right now, there's no shoulder. It is just like 205 has the shoulder, which is, I think, a horrendous, wonderful thing.
Yeah. There will be shoulders on the bridge.
Okay.
Yes, both directions.
Those were my questions that they had. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate, Carly, your presentation. You don't need to respond. I just want to add one thing, and I know our Clackamas folks understand this, and that is that you're right. People that are going to cross the river, they have two choices. It's going to be either Glen Jackson Bridge or it's going to be the Interstate Bridge, right? But as you go across the bridge, whether it's north or south, if those corridors are completely plugged up and they get worse, then there's more people on the local side that are going to veer off the freeway, spillage into our local neighborhoods, and that is the main issue that 205 has become a safety issue for us. And so my concern is that for not for the interstate traffic, but more for the localized traffic that uses the interstate, we have already too many people that are avoiding the freeway because of congestion and spilling off in the neighborhoods. And mine's one of them, as is Mayor Milch's and West Lynn and Oregon City. We're all seeing that today, and we're just frightened just that it could just be far worse than it is today. And that's not a good picture.
Yeah, understand the concern.
Well, thank you for the time. I know we're a little bit over, but Carly, great job. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Yep, you'll see the same presentation, so you're welcome.
Right.
Have a good one.
Bye. Jamie, what's next?
I'm pleased to welcome our friends from Team TPAC for their regular update.
Good morning, mayors, councilors, commissioners. I'm Will Farley. I represent the cities of Clackamas County at the Transportation Policy Alternatives Committee meetings. Giving you highlights of our March meeting, which was a hybrid meeting, which was great for reviewing a whole bunch of plans coming our way. To start the meeting, we had our typical stuff of the fatal crash update. We had 5 fatalities in February, with one of those occurring in Clackamas County. We received some highlights from ODOT, Vision Zero Network, and PBOT that are taking action to improve the safety of our transportation network. And then diving into the plans, we went into our draft 2027 to 2030 Metro Transportation Improvement Program, or the MTIP, which manages about $1.1 billion in federal funding across 139 projects. The draft was released about a little over a week ago on March 9th to start its 30-day public comment period. There will be a public hearing planned for tomorrow at JPACT, where you'll hear a little bit of highlights. It's planning to return to TPAC later this spring for recommendation. Next plan we got to dive into was the draft 26-27 Unified Planning Work Program, or what we call the UPWP. This plan outlines the region's federally funded transportation planning activities for the fiscal year. It is planning to return to TPAC in April for recommendation next month. Time flies. We also had a draft final report, interesting way to call that one, for the Regional Emergency Transportation Routes, or the RETR project. Metro presented to us the draft final report and recommendations from phase 2 of the project, which assessed emergency routes in the region for disaster response and mobility. Metro staff is going to refine the draft based on some of the feedback and return to TPAC again in April for recommendation. And then we went into the Regional Transportation Demand Management Strategy, or TDM, where they revised it along with, or they introduced the revised strategy along with public comment summary. TDM strategies aim to cut single occupancy trips, manage demand, and promote alternative travel modes and telework. Again, this one will return in TPAC in April for a formal recommendation. Jeff, did I miss any of our highlights?
That was a very good recap there. The only other small item to flag for C4 Metro is among the coverage of the Team TPAC. We do just have one staffing change for the alternates within the city of Milwaukee. Same city representative seat, but just the staffing there has changed slightly. So we'll be asking for your formal kind of C4 at your next meeting, the formal acknowledgement of that, switching from one representative within the city of Milwaukee to another who's been kind of reassigned within that category. But that's all from Team TPAC. Thank you, Will. Any questions for us? We're happy to help.
Questions? Well, thank you both, Will and Jeff. Jamie?
All right, thank you, Team TPAC. Shifting over to the impact side, it was mentioned earlier, but the impact meeting later this month has been canceled. But there's some exciting things coming in April with the work program in your packet. With that, I'm pleased to welcome a friend from Metro's Waste and Environmental Services to share about an upcoming forum they're holding and an invitation to this group. Christina, I will turn the floor over to you and pull up your slides.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Cristina Valenzuela-Seguedo. I'm here representing Metro's Waste Prevention and Environmental Services Department. I'd like to take just a few minutes today to share an invitation and some information on our virtual budget forum, which we are hosting on April 15th from 3 to 5 p.m. This budget forum is a part of our larger budget engagement efforts, which focus on building a shared understanding of how the regional garbage and recycling system is funded and how budget decisions are made. We do this work throughout the year through our work with the Regional Waste Advisory Committee, and this committee advises the Metro Council on the management of the regional garbage and recycling system. It includes elected officials from local jurisdictions, representatives from industry and reuse organization, and users of the system. And so this budget forum is an opportunity to bring a broader group of those folks together, from local government partners to industry representatives, community organizations, all involved in the regional garbage and recycling system. The forum will focus on first, the implementation progress made from last year's budget decisions, the proposed FY 26-27 Waste Prevention and Environmental Services budget, which will include the department's budget priorities and financial strategy proposed for the coming fiscal year. And of course, there will be opportunity to provide input during the listening session. The registration link for the forum may be found in your agenda packet. Next slide, please, Jamie. Thank you. I also want to share additional engagement opportunities related to the budget. So in addition to the forum, which again is on Wednesday, April 15th from 3 to 5 p.m., on April 16th, we'll bring the proposed budget in front of the Regional Waste Advisory Committee members. On April 30th, we'll have another opportunity with the Regional Waste Advisory Committee to discuss their budget guidance. And information on those meeting dates may be found on Metro's website. We hope that you or a representative from your organization will join us. Hearing directly from partners such as yourselves really does help ensure that our decisions are informed by the needs and the realities of our communities. Thank you so much again for your time.
Okay. Jamie, what's next?
Briefly, Christina, can you remind me, this is the budget process that's used to set the costs that are passed through to, households, right? For their garbage service?
Correct, yes. So the solid waste fees, the regional system fee and the solid waste fee.
Great,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead and promote Team TPAC for their agenda item. All right, our final item on the agenda today is a regular update from Team MTAC before I turn the floor over to Ms. Stasny. Just want to flag that in your packets, there are written reports from Team TPAC and Team MTAC. These reports are worth their weight in gold. They're typically 2 pages to 3 pages, and they're really built to be a work resource that you can carry into JPAC and MPAC to provide context for some of the items that you're seeing and what you're hearing from your local staff. With that, Ms. Stasny, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Janie. Good morning, everyone. Apologies, I'm unable to be on camera this morning, but I do have an update for you from Team MTAC. So at our past meeting, we learned about the local preferred alternatives for 82nd Avenue, TB Highway, and Montgomery Park streetcar. Today at our meeting, just after this one, we will be making a recommendation on those LPAs that will then be forwarded on to MPAC for their conversation. Also last month, Clackamas County staff had the opportunity to present an update on the Sunrise Corridor Community Project and all of the great work that the Coalition Leadership Group is moving forward right now. Had a great conversation with the MTAC group about that project and the progress they're making in supporting the community and realizing the vision. We also got an update from their Future Vision team on their engagement plan, how they're hoping to reach out to folks inside the UGB, but also outside the UGB to get feedback on the future of our region. And then the Westside Economic Alliance, which Clackamas County is a part of, and staff from Clackamas County participated in, gave an update on the industrial lands work that WEA had been leading through creating a technical table to develop some recommendations for Metro. Those were received at MTAC as well as IMPAC last month, and we'll be going forward to Metro Council on March 31st for their conversation consideration. Today, after we finish approving or making a recommendation, I'm guessing it will be approval for the LPAs for those transit projects. We will then hear from Metro about their land banking scope. They're looking at doing some land banking to support the production of affordable housing. We will also receive a primer on the Urban Growth Management Functional Plan as we are all anticipating an update to that plan. That is where the policy direction is integrated for application around housing and some of the other topics that have had major changes in policy recently. We'll also then hear about the cooling corridors resolution, which you heard about this morning, and be asked to give a recommendation on that. And then finally, we'll have a bit of a workshop where we'll learn more about Metro's new model, Urban Sim. Metro has been using their own internally created model for many, many years. It's a pretty big deal that they're moving over to this Urban Sim model, and they have to, update all the inputs and all of these things. Very technical exercise. We will have a 45-minute workshop to better understand the new model, the inputs, and talk a little bit about the distributed forecast, which many of your staff are engaged in and will be over the coming months. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. And Jamie Lorenzini, what's next?
Thank you, sir. This concludes the items we have scheduled for today. I'll turn the floor back over to you.
Okay. Thank you. To you all, it was brought to my attention that may have been some confusion about whether or not the Clackamas County was going to put the sheriff's levy on the ballot in May, and I'm not certain as to why there was doubt, but indeed the sheriff's levy will be on the ballot in May, and it's basically designed to maintain its existing delivery of services as in the past. It'll be a slightly higher rate. And the ballot language, and so forth will be here public pretty soon. But I just want to let you know that that it is happening, and I know we're still wrangling with other numbers and factors that are not related to the levy as we prepare for the budget. But I didn't want to put our staff or the sheriff's office in any position to try to speculate or answer questions when we're still working on that. So I just wanted to give you that update that we're moving forward with the levy. So any questions about that? Mayor Milch, see your hand up.
Has consideration ever been given to splitting the levy into two parts? One part related to that which incorporated cities are help pay for, like the jail, and other parts that have to do with personnel for the sheriff's office, which serve unincorporated cities or those cities which contract with the county for law enforcement services. There's a concern that some cities who have their own police departments may be less supportive of a measure that looks like it's supporting sheriffs who work other places.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable question, and I think there needs to be perhaps some clarity in the future as we are now. I could say this, that we are doing a more detailed, sophisticated approach and to try to understand where those costs are being allocated and where those costs are actually being required or requested, right? So, the push and pull of where's the need. You're right. Some of these things are county-wide, regardless of where you are. The jail is a great example. Detectives are another great example. There's a number of things that overlay, regardless of where you are, whether you're incorporated or unincorporated. The cities that do not have their own police agency have a contract with the sheriff's office for delivery of law enforcement services. And, we're looking at that calibration as well. And what we have found, I'll just be as delicate as I can. What we have found is that they've been in need of an update and they were a little bit lagging. So the pressures that the county general fund have seen has been a result of those updates and calibration not being present or up to date as they should have been. So that's why you're seeing the current levy a little bit higher or somewhat higher, is that as we are calibrating all these things, we will be looking at that. And I think in the future, to your question about should there be two different levies, what I will say, not necessarily associated to your question, is that we're going to be looking at a bond perhaps to fund the patrol cars or the fleet. I won't say patrol cars only, but the fleet. So that would include, SWAT. That would include jail vehicles to move people back and forth to jail, patrol, all those things. So what we have found is that a bond can be put on the ballot for that capital expense only. And so that's something that we will try to be more forthcoming on. And to your question, I think that's a good one. How do we distinguish between the services that the cities pay or the cities that have their own police department? How are those shared or calculated? That's a great question. I think in the future we'll have to answer that question. Okay. Any other questions? Great. Well, looks like we have the opportunity to give you 8 minutes of your life back. So I want to take advantage of that. I want to thank everyone for their questions and participation this morning. And we'll see you next time and have a safe drive home.